Willow married me for money. I knew she looked down on me because I was mute, but I didn't care whether she liked me or not. As long as she belonged to me, that was enough. In my mind, I cursed her parents, cursed her first love, and cursed her too, but what I didn't know was that she could read minds. Every single insult I threw at her in my head, she heard them loud and clear. Chapter 1. I was born mute. My parents worried endlessly about my marriage prospects. Fortunately, the Wang family had wealth and power, so finding a wife was never a concern for me. I wanted to spend my life with a gentle and virtuous wife, so my elders arranged for me to marry Willow, the eldest daughter of the Liu family. But I later found out that Willow already had a childhood sweetheart. She was forced to marry me after her parents tore them apart. I don't know exactly when Willow gained the ability to read minds, but the first time I noticed something was off was on our wedding day, when I silently cursed her ex-boyfriend in my head right in front of her. On our wedding day, I stood beside Willow with a dark expression. Luckily, she wasn't in the mood to smile either, so the two of us, both stone-faced, accepted the congratulations of the guests. That was until Makoto showed up. For the first time that day, Willow's lifeless expression softened into a slight smile. I thought to myself, disgusting. He's dressed like a groom. If someone didn't know better, they'd think he was the one getting married today. I kept cursing Makoto in my head. Willow suddenly turned to look at me, a trace of warning in her eyes. I had no idea what was going on and gave her a questioning look. Her warning gaze swept over me again, this time carrying a hint of irritation as she said, "Watch your words." Ridiculous. I was mute. What words had I even spoken? I continued cursing Makoto in my head, and while I was at it, I cursed Willow too. On the surface, though, I remained calm and composed, using sign language to ask, What's going on?" Willow's face darkened. She enunciated each word carefully. "George, do you have a problem with us?" What the hell? How was she reading my mind like some kind of parasite living in my head? But on the outside, I kept my expression blank and gave her a clueless smile. Willow scoffed coldly and turned back to continue talking to Makoto. The way they were acting, anyone would think this was their wedding instead of ours. I kept up my polite smile, but inside, I was cursing. Dumbass. Willow sighed in exasperation. Chapter 2. As the reception came to an end, Makoto's reluctance to part with Willow was practically written all over his face. Willow's parents had also come to the entrance to see off the guests. Seeing the two of them lingering together, not only did they say nothing, but Willow's mother even smiled as she took my arm and led me away. She said, "George, they haven't seen each other in a long time. Let them catch up, we'll wait for them in the car." I smiled and nodded, but in my mind, I thought, like mother, like daughter. A shameless daughter must come from a shameless mother. Willow stopped in her tracks. I noticed her expression darken, but I just assumed she was annoyed that I was walking too slowly. Never in a million years would I have considered that she could read minds. As I waved at her, I casually threw in another curse at her father. A rotten daughter must have a rotten father too. Willow was speechless. I waited in the car with her mother for over half an hour. Finally, Willow and her father strolled over at an unhurried pace. She turned to her mother and said, "George and I will head back to our place." Her mother was momentarily stunned, about to ask something when her father shot her a look that stopped her. Catching on, her mother smiled meaningfully and said, all right, you two go home and have a good night." As soon as I stepped out of the car, their vehicle sped off. Willow remained standing there, showing no intention of heading home. I looked at her, puzzled. She asked, "So it's not just Makoto you have a problem with, you have issues with my parents too?" I was dumbfounded. How was it that everyone I cursed in my head, she somehow knew about? I stared at her in even greater confusion, but Willow didn't tell me about her mind-reading ability. She simply gave me a cold warning, "Don't make things difficult for Makoto. He was already heartbroken enough when we broke up." Oh, how heartbroken was he? Maybe about 2 minutes of staring blankly into space. Then he dramatically declared to Willow, "Even if you marry someone else, I will wait for you forever." Makoto even had the audacity to attend our wedding today and post on Twitter, "Wearing a suit to your wedding, does that count as being your groom?" Even for a moment. That post was now pinned at the top of his social media. His grand display of love for Willow was also his biggest insult to me. Just that alone should justify me making his life miserable, right? And yet, Willow had the nerve to warn me for his sake. I sneered internally and boldly unleashed my thoughts. If you love each other so much, why don't you have the guts to ask me for a divorce? If it weren't for my mother's peace of mind, I wouldn't have married you in the first place. And you, with your dumbass attitude, have the nerve to look down on me just because I'm mute? Yeah, you can talk, but I haven't heard you say a single decent word yet. George. Willow finally snapped, gritting her teeth as she called my name. I was so immersed in my mental rant that her outburst startled me. I looked at her, asking with my eyes, "What?" Willow glared at me and demanded, "Did you just call me a dumbass?" I was speechless. Sure, everything I said was true, but getting caught red-handed like this, yeah, this was beyond embarrassing. Chapter 3. I signed to Willow. "How do you know I was insulting you?" Willow didn't want to reveal her mind-reading ability. She simply rolled her eyes and said, "Your face says it all." So, according to her, I could curse someone out just with my expression. Doubtful. I touched my face, struggling to believe my expression management had suddenly become this terrible. Then, putting on a sincere smile, I signed, "I didn't call you dumb." Willow shut her eyes for a moment, looking like she had just suffered internal injuries from sheer frustration. I pretended not to notice and turned away, heading toward the car on my own. But my mood felt as endless and heavy as the night, stretching on with no glimpse of light. I had always known that Willow married me for money. She despised the fact that I was mute. Fortunately, I didn't like her either. For over a year, I had endured her presence, but it was all an act. Yet today, the doctor told me my mother didn't have much time left, 3 months, at most. For this final stretch, I didn't want her to worry about anything. Even if I loathed Willow, even if I never wanted to marry her in the first place, I could endure it for my mother's sake. But fate had never been kind to me. I was diagnosed with a terminal illness. The doctor who had been treating my mother was even more devastated than I was. He said, "George, you're so young. How could this happen?" How? I was devastated too, but strangely, beneath the sadness, there was a trace of relief. If I died, I could be with my mother again. That didn't seem so bad. That night, I stayed at the hospital. It was late when I received a call from an unknown number. It was one of Willow's close friends. She said, "Brother-in-law, Willow's drunk. Can you come pick her up?" Someone beside her urgently whispered, "Are you stupid? Your brother-in-law is mute. He can't talk. How's he supposed to respond to you?" "Oh, right." Her voice took on an embarrassed tone. Then she added, "Brother-in-law, my bad. If you can come, just send a text." "Okay." I hadn't planned on responding, but maybe because I was dying, the thoughts I had long suppressed surged up all at once. Divorce. I wanted to divorce Willow as soon as possible, but now, there was a mandatory 1-month cooling-off period before the divorce could be finalized. A month wasn't a long time, but for me, it was too precious. I wanted to sever all ties with Willow before I died. So, I went to pick her up. She was completely wasted, lying obediently on the sofa. I sat beside her in silence, waiting for her to sober up. As soon as she did, I would ask for a divorce. Chapter 4. She lay on the sofa for a while, then sat up with a frown, looking uncomfortable. I stared at her, unwavering. Maybe my gaze was too cold because when our eyes met, Willow froze. It was as if the alcohol in her system cleared up a little. "What are you staring at?" she asked impatiently. I signed to her, "Let's get a divorce." Willow didn't understand. After living together for over a year, she still knew very little about me. Any slightly complex or uncommon sign language she couldn't recognize, because she had never even tried to learn. I let out a silent, bitter laugh in my mind. Talking to an idiot is exhausting. Willow raised a brow. I picked up my phone and typed out a sentence for her to read. Still hazy from the alcohol, she blinked at the words, momentarily dazed. Then she asked, "Divorce? Who's divorcing who?" I pointed at her, then at myself. Finally, she understood, but she couldn't believe it. A mute man, daring to ask her for a divorce. Annoyed, she scoffed. "You don't seriously think that after divorcing me, you'll have a bunch of women lining up for you, do you?" I shook my head. My resolve didn't waver. She grew even angrier. "Fine, if you want a divorce, I'll agree. But everything we discussed before stays the same. Your family's investment, non-refundable." I nodded. "Consider it the price I paid for my mother's happiness over the past year." It was a hefty sum, but a deal was a deal. There was no taking it back. Willow eyed me suspiciously, even slowing down her speech as she asked, "George, why do you suddenly want a divorce?" That should have been the first thing she asked, if she cared about me at all, but because she didn't. She expressed her anger first. Only after that did she bother asking why. I didn't answer. I just smiled at her. As I stood up, she suddenly grabbed my wrist and repeated, "Why are you suddenly insisting on a divorce?" She stood to lose a lot. There had to be a reason. She was probably used to being adored, so the thought of getting dumped by a mute man was unacceptable. But if she thought about it, she should be happy. Once we divorced, she could be with Makoto openly. Wasn't that a good thing? I remembered back when I proposed to Willow. I had been prepared to make our marriage work. Even if there was no love, we could still be respectful partners, living a steady life together. People only saw our wealth now, but they didn't know how my mother and I had nearly been destroyed after my father passed. My mother had always worried that I would end up alone. After I got married, she worried that Willow and I wouldn't last. So, she spared no effort in helping the Liu family and supporting Willow, all in the hope that I could have a happy marriage. But our wedding day had already humiliated me enough. I had once asked Willow to talk to Makoto about deleting his pinned post, the one mocking our marriage, but Willow had said, "People have the freedom to post whatever they want. Who are you to control him? And what I choose to do or not do is also my freedom. Don't try to control me." It was at that moment I realized, Willow wasn't even worthy of mutual respect. After that, I never tried again, but to Willow, my existence alone was a restriction on her freedom. Well, now, that restriction was about to disappear. I thought, Willow, I'm dying. You're finally free. As that thought landed, her grip on my wrist suddenly loosened. Shock flickered across her face, but I didn't know she could hear my thoughts. I was just relieved she didn't ask any more questions. That saved me the trouble of explaining. After all, she didn't love me. She didn't care about me. Why would my death matter to her? Saying too much would only make me look pathetic. I turned and walked toward the bedroom upstairs. With every step, I couldn't help but sigh internally. What a waste of a beautiful face. If only her character were better. She'd be perfect. Makoto doesn't love her that much, does he? Otherwise, how could he let her take all the blame for cheating? They deserve each other, at least after ruining me. They won't go on to ruin someone else. But, what a shame. I had walked this earth without ever knowing what love truly felt like. Maybe if I had met someone better, I could have experienced it. But Willow, she wasn't worthy. Chapter 5. After I went to bed, Willow went out to meet a friend. Her friend had known her since childhood. The moment she saw Willow's expression, she could tell something was wrong. At the bar, Willow looked exhausted, her brows furrowed with worry. Sophia asked, "Did you have a fight with George?" Willow shot her a sideways glance, annoyed that she was both right and wrong at the same time. Divorce was a much bigger deal than just a fight. And then there was George's illness. It seemed serious. Frowning, Willow picked up the cup in front of her and took a sip. But instead of the familiar burn of alcohol, she tasted tea. She sighed. That's when she remembered. She and Sophia were drinking tea. It was odd. Really? Sophia worked at a bar but only ever drank tea. Willow asked. Speaking of which, why did you suddenly quit drinking, Sophia? Sophia replied. It wasn't sudden. It's been 2 years. Willow frowned. But 2 years ago, it was sudden. Sophia didn't respond. Willow continued. If I remember correctly, you quit drinking because of David, right? Did he really influence you that much? Sophia shot her a look. How can you drink tea and still talk so much? Willow scoffed and took another sip. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Then, out of nowhere, Sophia said, he influenced me a lot. When he disappeared, it felt like my life was over too. Willow frowned. But when he was around, you didn't seem to care that much. Sophia sighed. That's why you have to cherish people while you can. That goes for you too. Their friend group had an unspoken hierarchy based on age. Sophia was the eldest, but she rarely lectured anyone, especially about relationships. Maybe because it was late, and neither of them was in a good mood. She was finally opening up. Sophia asked, Willow, how do you really feel about George and Makoto? Willow took a sip of tea and said, I don't really feel anything for Makoto anymore. The breakup was just so sudden, and it hit him hard. I felt guilty, so I wanted to make it up to him. Sophia nodded. And George? Willow murmured. George. She thought for a long time but couldn't find the right words. Sophia guessed. You're just used to him. Maybe you've developed feelings over time. Willow hesitated. Maybe a little. It was only after George suddenly asked for a divorce tonight that she realized just how terrifying habits could be. In that moment, she pictured coming home to an empty house, and it irritated her. Sophia advised, since you've moved on from your ex, don't hurt the person beside you. Willow rolled her eyes. Why are you full of wisdom all of a sudden? Sophia replied, because I've lost someone. Willow stayed quiet. Sophia sighed. Take my advice, treat George well, or you'll regret it. Willow smirked. If I regret it, will you finally buy me a drink? Sophia let out a cold laugh. I hope you can stay that stubborn forever. Chapter 6. The next morning, when I woke up, Willow was gone. I sent her a message. Where did you go? She didn't reply. A while later, I heard movement outside. I thought she had come back. After all, we had discussed divorce last night, and she had more or less agreed. Today, we should be going to the Civil Affairs Bureau. But when I opened the door, the person standing outside was Makoto. His attitude toward me had always been unpleasant, and now that Willow wasn't around, he was even more unrestrained in his mockery. He said, let's talk. Then, as if suddenly remembering, he sneered. Oh, right, you're a mute, just like Willow. He had a voice, he just didn't know how to use it properly. Still, I was curious. What did he want to talk about, and what right did he have to demand a conversation with me? I stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter. Makoto raised an eyebrow, surprised, but eventually walked in and sat on the sofa. I turned to grab a pen and paper, ready to communicate that way, but before I could write anything, he scoffed. A guest arrives, and you don't even offer them water. A guest? What kind of guest was he? Good thing I didn't love Willow, otherwise, he'd be my enemy. I smiled and wrote, say what you need to say. Don't waste my time. Makoto let out a cold laugh. What? Do you think just because you married Willow, your life will be smooth sailing? You two will get divorced sooner or later. I smiled again and wrote, it was your Willow who married me, in exchange for temporary peace of mind. If it weren't for my family's investment, the Liu family would have gone bankrupt long ago. Even now, despite their recovery, they wouldn't dare kick me out entirely. If I didn't bring up divorce, Willow would probably stay with me indefinitely. Who did Makoto think he was? I gave him a calm, indifferent glance. No need for threats, no need for harsh words. The balance of power was already clear in just one look. Makoto was furious. He shot up from the sofa, gritting his teeth. You think money makes you invincible? No matter how rich you are, you're still a mute. I asked Willow. She's never even let you touch her in all this time. Even if you don't divorce her, you'll never have children together. Your dad is dead, your mom is dying, and once you're gone, everything you have will, bang. I punched Makoto straight in the face, knocking him back onto the sofa. He clutched his face, struggling to sit up. I had hit him hard, so hard that my own fingers ached, but he had brought up my parents. He could have Willow, I didn't care, but if he dared to speak about my family, then he deserved to get hit. Makoto eventually snapped out of his daze and started cursing at me. He probably wanted to fight back, but then we heard footsteps outside. He realized Willow was back, so he had to endure it. He had to make me the villain. Willow didn't disappoint him. The moment she walked in and saw him bleeding from his nose, she turned to me and demanded, "George, what are you doing?" Here we go again. I'd lost count of how many times this scene had played out. Sometimes, I even suspected that in their little affair, I was just a prop, something that made it all feel more exciting. But today, I wasn't playing along. I picked up my phone, unlocked it, and pressed play on a recording. It was a collection of all the insults, mockery, and taunts Makoto had thrown at me every time we were alone. His voice rang out, clear and undeniable, sneering, spitting out vile words, one sentence after another. Makoto's face went pale. Willow was stunned. The recording wasn't even finished when Makoto suddenly lunged, trying to snatch my phone. Makoto. Willow's voice was sharp, low and laced with barely contained anger. Makoto froze, panic flashing in his eyes. He quickly tried to explain. Willow, you have to believe me. That's not me. He faked it. He must have used AI too. Willow's expression remained dark. Get out. Willow, get out. Don't make me say it a third time. Makoto clenched his teeth, his face twisted in frustration. But in the end, he had no choice but to stumble out the door. Honestly, if he had managed to squeeze out a few tears just now, his performance would have been perfect. With his acting skills, he might even have a shot at an Oscar. Chapter 7. After Makoto left, Willow saw my cold expression and, for once, softened her tone. George, let's talk. She sounded just like Makoto. It was disgusting. I scoffed, picked up the paper and pen, and wrote, "There's nothing to talk about except the divorce." Willow hesitated, then said, "This morning, I went to the hospital to see your mom. In over a year of marriage, this was the first time she had visited my mother alone, and it was after I asked for a divorce. I felt no surprise, only disgust. I wrote, I already agreed to all your conditions. Why did you go see my mom?" Willow replied, "She doesn't know you're sick, does she?" I froze. How did she know I was sick? I shot up from my seat, my usual composure shattered. Willow met my gaze and slowly said, "You don't have to write. I can hear what you're thinking." I was speechless. This wasn't just shocking, it shattered my entire understanding of reality. No wonder she always questioned me whenever I cursed her parents, Makoto, or even her. Every word of my silent insults, she had heard them loud and clear. I asked, "Since when?" She answered, "Half a year ago, the night you came back from the hospital. That was the night my mother's condition worsened. The doctors had suggested an alternative treatment, but the chances of success were slim. That night, after my mother fell asleep, I sat by her hospital bed until 2 in the morning. The nurse had already gone home, but in the middle of the night, she unexpectedly returned to the hospital. She held my hand and said, 'George, I was worried about you.' A stranger, someone who was just doing her job for money, left the warmth of her bed in the middle of the night because she cared about me." Meanwhile, Willow had been at a party. Makoto was there too. Makoto even proudly posted about it online. They were celebrating, and I was in silent agony, unable even to cry out loud. I never would have guessed that the night Willow gained her mind-reading ability was that night. At 4 in the morning, when I finally returned home, she had just gotten back as well. I remembered she mumbled something when she saw me. Back then, I was too grief-stricken to pay attention. I thought she was complaining about my bad mood, but now I realized she had been asking if something was wrong. I ignored her, and in that moment, she heard my thoughts for the first time. That night, I had thought, why does my mother have to be sick? If someone had to suffer, it should have been Willow. She deserves it. She should be the one dying. Willow had been speechless. At first, she didn't believe it, but after hearing my thoughts again and again, she slowly realized it was real. And nearly every time, I was smiling on the outside while cursing her on the inside. Out of every 10 thoughts she heard, 8 were insults aimed at her. The remaining 2, curses toward her parents and Makoto. Willow sighed. "I always thought you were just petty, that you resented my past with Makoto, so you kept bad-mouthing him in your head. I never knew that he insulted you, too. Oh, he insulted me plenty, and his words were disgusting, but neither of them had expected me to record everything. Every single time, I hadn't originally planned to expose him. I had just kept the recordings as leverage, something to use if I ever needed it. But since Makoto had asked for it, I was more than happy to give him what he deserved. I looked at Willow coldly and asked in my mind, now that you know everything, so what? Willow pressed her lips together, hesitating. She didn't want to talk about Makoto. Fine, I wouldn't force her. So I asked a different question. When are we going to the Civil Affairs Bureau? Willow said, George, you should focus on your treatment right now. I wrote, what I do or don't do is none of your business. Those were her exact words to me before. Now, I was throwing them back at her, without waiting for her reaction. I got up and left. Willow called after me. George, where are you going? What's it to you, dumbass? Willow was speechless. Chapter 8. I went to the hospital. The caretaker greeted me with a smile. Miss Lu came by this morning. I nodded. Seeing that I wasn't surprised, she hesitated before asking softly, are you two back together? I shook my head, then took out my phone and typed, we're getting a divorce. She was startled, holding my hand tightly. She asked, did she ask for it? I replied, no, I did. I was the one who didn't want Willow. So what if she was breathtakingly beautiful? She had never loved me, never even seen me as her husband. What was the point of keeping such a marriage? The caretaker studied my expression, reading the certainty in my eyes. She sighed, eyes reddening. Then, what will you do from now on? Yes, what would I do? My father was long gone, my mother was dying, and I was terminally ill. I had all the money in the world, but I couldn't buy a single person who genuinely cared for me. The caretaker looked even sadder than I felt. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I lowered my head, avoiding her gaze, because if I met her eyes, I might lose control and cry too. But even if I did, no sound would come out. Silent pain was like a boomerang, flowing out with my tears, only to circle back and stab into my heart all over again. I knew this feeling too well. It hurt. So much that I wished I could just die and be done with it. The caretaker told me that Willow had spent a long time talking to my mother that morning. After Willow left, my mother secretly wiped away tears. The caretaker hadn't dared to ask too much, afraid of making her even sadder, but I could guess what Willow had said. I typed out a message to my mother. What did Willow say to you this morning? She smiled brightly. What else? She said that your relationship is getting better and that I should wait to become a grandmother. I signed. No, she wouldn't say that. Why not? My mother playfully rolled her eyes. Didn't you always tell me how good she was to you? That had all been lies. To make my stories more believable, I had even taken pictures of my takeout meals and sent them to my mother, claiming Willow had cooked them. I had woven so many lies that, in my mother's eyes, Willow and I had always been a loving couple, but now, I had to be the one to shatter that illusion. I signed, Mom, Willow and I are getting a divorce. She wasn't shocked, just slightly surprised before she gently asked, is Willow just throwing a tantrum? I shook my head and replied, she doesn't love me. My mother sighed. I see. She reached out and pulled me into a hug. In that instant, all the composure she had been holding onto crumbled. Her voice trembled. Our George is such a wonderful person. If she doesn't love you, it's her loss. You must have suffered so much, holding on this long for my sake. I shook my head. I didn't feel like I had suffered. Even though Willow had never truly cut ties with Makoto, I had never loved her. So I wasn't heartbroken, just amused at the absurdity of it all. The only thing that made me sad was that I hadn't asked for a divorce sooner. Hadn't told my mother the truth earlier, because in the end, she had to hear it from Willow's lips, that she didn't love me. When Willow had said those words this morning, my mother must have been heartbroken. Hearing her own child being so thoroughly rejected, she choked back tears and tried to comfort me. It's okay, George, you're such a good person. You'll definitely meet someone even better in the future. Just let Willow live to regret this. I smiled and nodded, but deep down, I knew Willow wouldn't regret it, and I wouldn't have a future. Chapter 9. Willow kept delaying the divorce. I had messaged her several times, but she either made excuses or ignored me altogether. Losing patience, I took the matter straight to her parents, and then, they exploded. Mr. Liu scolded her harshly. We turned a blind eye to your situation with Makoto, but how can you have no boundaries whatsoever? If George takes this public, he's a mute, and from a single-parent family, the public will side with him. It'll ruin your reputation and drag down Liu Corp's stock price. Go apologize to George immediately, no matter what. You cannot get divorced. After berating Willow, they turned to me, attempting to play the sympathy card. They brought expensive gifts to the hospital, telling my mother how much they valued me. Mrs. Liu said warmly, whatever Willow has done wrong, we'll discipline her. We'll make sure she changes for the better. George, don't act on impulse. Talking about divorce so casually, it's the worst thing for a marriage. I thought, marriage? There's no such thing between me and Willow. Just as I was thinking that, Willow stepped into the room and heard my thoughts. Word for word, her brows furrowed. I put on an innocent expression and, just for fun, added another thought. Big, dumb, bozo. After all, no one else could hear me insult her. In her parents' eyes, I was still the victim. Willow had no way to explain herself. Frustrated, she pulled me outside. She said, I'll agree to anything except divorce, I replied. So if I keep mistresses, you'd be fine with that too? George, I continued, just divorce me already. At least let me have some peace before I die. She hesitated. Do you really hate me that much? I hadn't expected her to ask that, but her expression was serious. She looked me in the eye and said, George, can we try again? Had her parents driven her insane? What was there to try again? We had never started in the first place. I looked at her and deliberately thought, one word at a time. Willow, I have never liked you, not even in the beginning. I had only ever wanted a stable life. That had nothing to do with love. I continued, let's end this while we can still be civil. Sign the divorce papers, or I'll take this to court. If it got ugly, it wouldn't just be my reputation on the line. Willow bit her lip, glaring at me. George, you're heartless. Flattered. Just as she was about to explode, the caretaker came running toward me, her face full of panic. George. I turned to her, and my heart sank. A terrible premonition rippled through me. She grabbed my arm, breathless. Your mother, she's asking for you. It's not looking good. A deafening silence filled my ears, as if thunder had struck inside my head. If the caretaker hadn't been holding on to me, I might have collapsed on the spot. She hurried me back to the room. Doctors and nurses surrounded my mother's bed. Even Willow's parents looked anxious. Mrs. Liu tried to reassure me. Don't worry, George. We'll find the best doctors. Your mother will be fine. No, she wouldn't. We had money, enough to buy the best medicine, hire the best doctors, but not enough to stop death. After a round of tests, the doctor turned to us and shook his head. In that moment, I swear I heard my own heart crack. The medical staff stepped aside, and my mother reached out her hand. Mechanically, I moved forward and held it, my own hands trembling. George, her voice was barely a whisper, faint and fragile. Mommy has to go now. Don't cry. I wanted to listen to her. I wanted to be strong for her, but my tears wouldn't stop falling. She tried to lift her other hand to wipe them away, but she was too weak. Her hand barely moved before it dropped back down. George, don't cry. I nodded desperately, my mouth opening, trying to form words. I had once been able to speak. As a child, I had called out Mom and Dad. If I could just say Mom now, maybe I could have one less regret. But no sound came out. No matter how wide I opened my mouth, nothing left my lips, until Willow leaned down and whispered, George wants to call you Mom. My mother's cloudy eyes suddenly shone with light. She smiled at me and nodded. Mommy heard it. Then, she looked around at the others, silently telling them to leave. Only Willow and I remained. I thought she was going to ask us to stay together, but instead, she took Willow's hand and begged her, will you please divorce George? Willow froze, eyes shifting toward me. Suddenly, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I clutched my chest. Something inside me had completely shattered. Before, my mother had worried about leaving me alone, hoping someone would stay by my side. But now, she was afraid my marriage would ruin me, afraid I would spend my life trapped in a mistake. She wanted Willow to set me free. Please, she whispered, agree to the divorce. I didn't know if Willow was moved by a dying person's last wish or if she finally had a conscience. But in the end, she agreed. My mother let out a sigh of relief. She touched my head and smiled. George, just be yourself. Be happy. I will, she said. Mommy's going to find Daddy now. Come later. Okay. In the next life, be our child again. Okay, George. In her final moment, I lifted her into my arms. She took her last breath there. In my embrace, I held her hand, and felt her life slip away. I thought, Mom, I'm sorry, but I'm about to disobey you one last time. I'm coming to find you and Dad soon. Chapter 10. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room. Willow was sitting beside the bed. I had no idea how much time had passed. Seeing me move to get up, she quickly said, I've already arranged for your mother's funeral. Don't rush. Get out. The sharp, unhesitating words left Willow momentarily stunned. Holding back her temper, she said, George, I already promised your mother I would divorce you. Can you at least stop hating me so much? I can't unless you die. Willow was speechless. Realizing that talking to me was useless, she got up and went outside to cool off. When she returned, she found me typing furiously on my phone. Something about the way I looked set off alarm bells in her head. She rushed forward and snatched the phone from my hands. Her eyes widened as she read what I had written. George, do you have to do this? She snapped. I replied, I already told you, if you refuse to divorce me, I don't mind making this public. I was about to post a divorce statement. I didn't care if it ruined the Liu family's reputation. I didn't care if Liu Corp's stock price plummeted. I was dying. Why should I care about anyone else's survival? Willow stared at me for a long time. Seeing that I had no intention of backing down, her expression finally shifted, subtle, but filled with exhaustion. Softly, she said, George, I already promised your mother I would divorce you. Don't bring up my mother. If you hadn't gone to the hospital and told her you didn't love me, she wouldn't have been so upset. She might have lived a little longer. Willow stiffened. Then, after a pause, she said, I never said that. I went to the hospital to find out about your condition. I figured since I was already there, I should check on your mother, but I never said anything like that. Maybe my mother had been too perceptive, picking up the truth from Willow's demeanor alone. Willow hesitated, then said, I should have told you first. I'm sorry, George. Yeah, if she had told me, at least I could have prepared. We could have kept the story straight. My mother wouldn't have been able to coax the truth out of her. I was filled with resentment, but when I thought about it more, I realized I had no one to blame but myself. If I had admitted I didn't love Willow sooner, if I hadn't swallowed my anger on our wedding day, too many ifs. I was tired, so tired. The Liu family wanted to hold an extravagant funeral for my mother, but in accordance with her wishes, I kept everything simple. After she was buried, I moved back to my own house. Tabloid reporters followed Willow, capturing several images of her standing outside my building but never entering. Speculation arose. People suspected that our two families had fallen out and that we were heading for a divorce. The rumors sent Liu Corp's stock prices tumbling. Willow's parents came to see me, hoping I would reconcile with their daughter. Mr. Liu said, George, think about us too. If we're being honest, Willow never really did anything wrong to you. If our company collapses, how does that benefit you? Mom. Willow suddenly rushed in, cutting off her mother's words. She turned to her parents and said, go home. They were clearly unhappy, their faces stiff with disapproval. Willow glanced at me. I hadn't moved at all. More importantly, I hadn't thought anything. She suddenly looked uneasy. She stepped forward and said, George, let's go for a walk. Okay. Since moving back, I hadn't left the house for over 2 weeks. This massive home was empty except for me. I didn't speak, and no one spoke to me. I let myself sink deeper and deeper into this soundless world. Further and further down. Chapter 11. Willow ignored her parents and took me outside. Once we got into the car, she asked, is there anywhere you'd like to go? I looked out at the sunlight, so bright, so warm. The blood in my veins, which had felt lifeless for so long, suddenly seemed to stir again. I thought, I want to go to the mall. Willow nodded. She didn't understand why I suddenly wanted to go shopping, but she didn't question it. Not until I bought a well-fitted suit. That was when she started to realize. I wanted to wear it when I went to see my parents. By the time we arrived at the cemetery, the sun was setting. The golden glow of the sunset bathed the gravestones in warm light. Standing before their tomb, I straightened my collar and smiled. I thought, Mom, Dad, do you remember what I'm wearing today? Doesn't it look just like the suit I wore on my birthday as a child, the one you both picked out for me? I dressed like this so you would recognize me right away. Living alone is exhausting. I miss you both so much. Willow stood behind me, listening to every word in my heart. I didn't care if she heard. At this point, nothing mattered anymore, but Willow did care. She suddenly stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me from behind. Her voice was hoarse, like she was struggling to hold something back. George, the hospital found a matching donor. If you undergo the transplant, you'll be able to live. I don't need it. She tightened her hold on me. But didn't you say you don't want to have anything to do with me after you die? I scheduled the surgery for a month from now. We can go to the Civil Affairs Bureau first, finalize the divorce, and then you can have the operation. It was a tempting offer. If my mother were still alive, I would have agreed without hesitation. But now, I had no reason to keep going. The pain in my body was nothing. The pain in my heart, however, was enough to consume everything. I thought, Willow, I'm tired. She whispered, then please, I'm begging you, just take the surgery. Okay. I still shook my head. A tear landed on my sleeve, then another. Willow's choked voice trembled behind me. Your parents. They would want you to live. Do it for them, not for me. Please? We can get the divorce first, then you can have the surgery. George. I exhaled slowly, then thought, okay. Chapter 12. On the day we got our divorce certificates, Willow seemed to be in a great mood. She wore makeup and a brand new dress, looking down at the little red booklet in her hands. She then lifted her head and said to me, let me take you to the hospital. I shook my head, but she insisted. She said, we agreed, you'd go straight to surgery after getting the divorce. If I don't see you in the hospital myself, what if you run away halfway? I didn't argue, but for some reason, I felt a strange unease all day. Willow acted relaxed, even cheerful, yet something about her felt unbearably heavy. She followed me all the way to the operating room doors. Just before I went in, she leaned down and whispered, George, don't be afraid. Everything will get better. I wasn't afraid at all. If anything, she looked like the one who was scared. Maybe that late-night conversation with Sophia had woken her up. Maybe, over time, she had really developed feelings for me. But it was too late. Everything was too late. The surgery was a success. Before I was discharged, Liu Corp's lawyer came to see me with some documents to sign. It was a compensation agreement, something Willow had voluntarily set up after our divorce. The sum equated to nearly half of the money my family had invested in their company. The lawyer said that this was the most Willow had been able to fight for on my behalf. She didn't show up that day, and for a long, long time after, she didn't appear before me again, nor did she appear in public. Her parents also became much more low profile. Even when the media asked about her directly, they avoided the topic. I converted all my assets into a bank account balance. Then, I left. That day, the weather was awful, it rained nonstop. I stood by the airport's glass window, watching the raindrops slide down its surface. Then, in the reflection, I thought I saw a familiar figure, but when I turned around, all I saw was a sea of strangers, people hurrying toward better futures. No time to look back. 2 years later, on Lunar New Year's Eve, after a long silence, Willow finally posted on social media, "Happy New Year." The photo attached was of an airport, but aside from the glass panels, there was no one in the frame, no indication of who she was speaking to, and yet, everyone seemed to know. Many people liked the post. No one left a comment. Willow had just set her phone down when an unknown number called. The caller ID showed an international number. She hesitated, then picked up. At first, the other end was silent. Then, a voice came through. "Happy New Year." It wasn't a thought in her mind. It was a real voice. A warm, deep voice, like heaven's melody. Willow didn't respond. The call disconnected a moment later, but that day, it became the happiest new year of Willow's life. She whispered, "Happy New Year, George. I hope you're happy too."